All right, hello everyone, and welcome back. As I mentioned yesterday in our What Persuades Us lesson, we are going to be moving from just learning about what persuasion is to actually learning about how to translate that knowledge into the forming of a written argument. So if you hear me talk about persuasion and arguments, and you're a little confused on which one we're learning about both. Persuasion is the art of convincing someone to do something. An argument is the type of writing we're going to be doing. So we're going to be using our knowledge of persuasion to form a written argument. And I'm sure that when you looked at this week 5 folder, you saw all these lessons on toilet training and you were like, Miss Holloway, what the heck are we doing? Well, toilet training is actually the title of the essay that we're going to be using as a model this week to learn all of these different elements. Because what good is it to learn about all the elements of argument if we don't see them in action, right? So I figured the best way for us to walk through these, take notes, really figure these things out, is to look at an actual essay written by an actual student and find all of these different pieces. So essentially, the learning goal for this week and kind of going forward into the rest of the weeks of May is to identify the key elements of an argument, which is persuasion. So like I said, we're going to be reading an argument letter in which a 7th grader tries to convince her classmates to start or stop something. And I purposely don't tell you what it is that she's trying to get them to start or stop because that's what you have to figure out on your own, right? That is what argument is somebody trying to get someone to do something or to stop doing something. And it's up to you to kind of figure that out as we read. And this essay is very similar to the major assignment that you will complete during this unit. So ultimately, you will write an argument trying to convince some audience to start a behavior or stop a behavior. So every day, I will give you a couple of vocab words. These vocab words are critical for you to understand because they are the different elements of the argument. So as we move through paragraph by paragraph, you will have to pick out these different pieces of vocab, right? You don't have to just know them, but you also have to be able to identify them in a piece of writing and then ultimately use them. So I would advise pausing the video here, writing down just these couple of notes here, audience, issue, argument, and then kind of as we read, maybe taking down some little notes on what you're noticing as well. The notes are totally optional. I'm not collecting notes. The only thing that I am actually having you submit is the questions in the assessment in the folder. So it's helpful for you to take the notes because you'll be able to find those things easier once you go to answer the questions, but they are certainly not necessary. So if you'd like to pause here and take these notes, we'll kind of go through what these things are. So the first thing is audience. When I had you guys do your pre-assessment where you wrote to somebody at Higher Ground about some issue at Higher Ground, I said, who are you going to write the letter to target? Because ultimately, if you're writing an argument letter, you want to write to somebody who can actually do something about the problem, right? So your audience in this type of writing is the person or group the author wants to make the change. All right? The issue, I have to make that distinction between issue and argument. The issue is just the topic we're discussing. So without any bias or any argument in there, it's just the general issue that we are discussing. So if I'm talking about why cats are better than dogs, the issue at hand is pets. I don't add any additional information. The issue is pets. The argument is what's more specific. The argument is what the author or speaker wants the audience to do or believe. This is your thesis statement. So when I go in, when you write your piece of writing, I say, what's your thesis? This is what you're telling me. It's what you actually want the person, your audience, to do. So if I'm telling my audience, people of the world, that I think that cats are better than dogs, the issue is pets. The argument is that they should think that cats are better than dogs, and here's why. Here's a better example, more relevant to kind of what we're doing. This information was actually taken from a student, from a student's mini letter that they wrote last week. So their audience was Dr. Mohamud, so the principal at Higher Ground. The issue in general was just courses offered at Higher Ground. So without that bias in there, the issue is courses offered. And the argument that he posed was, you, Dr. Mohamud, should implement more elective courses for students to take. So he thinks that this person, this audience, right, should do this thing about this issue. And then he gave a bunch of reasons why, which we'll get into tomorrow. So Now that you know what this looks like, we are going to read the very first paragraph of this essay. You can find this in the Monday or in the Tuesday folder, and it will be in all of the folders going forward, just in case you don't want to have to go back and dig for it. It will always be in the folder. It's a PDF, and I advise that you follow along on that as we kind of read here, have that opened. And if you don't, that's fine. I will just read it aloud. So here are the questions that you're going to want to think about as we read the very first paragraph. Who is the audience? So who is the writer of this essay trying to get to do the change? What is the issue at hand? So generally, what is this essay about? And what is the author's argument on the issue? So what specifically is the author trying to persuade the audience to do or believe? And my hint that I always give for this type of writing is looking for a bossy statement. The author is going to say, you should do this. You should think this, right? It's not just, well, I think this way, so here it is. No, you should do this. With argument, you're always going to see somebody being bossy, telling you to do something. All right, so let's pop into the essay here. All right, so toilet training for 7th graders looks like this, written by our very own 7th grader, Dakota Olmos. So today we're just going to focus on the very first paragraph, and then as the days go on, we'll work into paragraphs 2 and 3 tomorrow. We'll do paragraphs 4 and 5 the following day, and then we'll work on introductions and conclusions. All right, so toilet training. Every day, I walk into the first floor restroom by the office and can't believe the mess. There's toilet paper covering 75% of the floor, soap dripping from the dispenser onto the wall and floor, paper towels stuck to the ceiling, and writing covering almost every inch of all the stalls. It's disgusting. I try to avoid going into that restroom because it's so awful, but that's the restroom that we 7th graders are supposed to use, so I don't really have much of a choice. We need to do something about the restroom. With just a little bit of effort, we can all take better care of the restrooms so that people will actually think about using them. All right, so that is the paragraph that we are focusing on today. Like I said, as the week goes on, we'll work through the rest of the writing. So it's up to you if you want to read the piece on your own before we go into the rest of the week. You totally can do that, and then just follow along as I read it within the slides. But like I said, I will read it aloud as we work through each piece, so you don't have to worry about reading it on your own time. So here is what's happening today. Your task is to go back into that Tuesday folder and find today's check for understanding. Just to be very clear, there will be a check for understanding every single day. So every single day, you're going to have to watch this video and see what paragraphs we're talking about, what vocab we're talking about, what you're expected to know. This is not like past units with our distance learning ordeal here where you can kind of just skim through and do the assignments and get by without watching the videos. You literally have to watch them to know what we're doing. And if you don't watch them and you try to do the stuff, you're going to get a 0. Like, I'll know that you didn't read the piece. So either you have to read it on your own time and figure these things out, or watch the video that literally pretty much gives you the answers. So this week, watching the video lessons is critical. All right, back to what I was saying. Today's task is the paragraph 1 check for understanding. You're going to be asked 3 questions in that check for understanding, and each question is worth a pretty good chunk of points because this is not just doing little grammar things. This is actually reading a piece of writing and formulating your own responses. So I want to know, who is the intended audience and how do you know who she's talking to? Give me a line in the essay that shows me who she's talking to. What is the issue at hand? So in general, what are we talking about? Give me a line from the essay that shows me that. What is the author's argument on the issue? Tell me where in the essay she tells us that. Like I have here in bold lettering, make sure that you are telling me where in the essay you're finding these things, because it does you no good to just say, like, I think it's this, I don't know how I knew that. No, find it. Tell me how you knew, because it's your job to be able to identify these things in writing so that you can go and write these things on your own. All right, it's 3 questions, and it's going to be due tonight at 11:59 p.m. because it's a very easy task. Shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes to do. All right. I will be available on Zoom today from 1 to 2. If you are a little bit confused about this still, I can kind of clarify, walk you through it. Otherwise, if you have simpler questions, you can just email or message me. All right, thank you, and I will see you tomorrow for more toilet training.